the New York Jets, a team that has constantly been a disappointment to the entirety of New York and New Jersey, thought they would be able to get something going in the 2023-24 season, but instead, an early injury to Aaron Rodgers ruined their hopes. So we're going to be going on in this series, which I hopefully remember to actually go a little bit further with, and get going through and start doing a little bit of a rebuild. The big storyline with this will be Aaron Rodgers himself. Rodgers missed the entire year. By the way, so the way that I'm doing this, right away, this is an online franchise. I went through on the schedule and I set every single result in the league to be the correct result. Of course, scores are going to be different, stats are going to be different. We're still going to be going off of in future stats based on what they had this past year in real life in the 23-24 season. So we'll be going off of that. But there still, of course, are some changes that I'm not really going to be able to change, which is a little bit on the unfortunate side. But we'll just have to deal with it. Let's start off by looking at our roster. Of course, Aaron Rodgers is the big man up front. But the question is, will he be staying? We'll get a little bit more into this storyline later. Don't worry. Zach Wilson had to come in as the de facto starter, and not someone who is really, well, he's someone who's proven that he's not capable of doing that. He's someone who just isn't really good at being a starter, and whether that's some development ruining him, or him just not being fit for the role, who knows? Zach Wilson, currently though, may still have to be in charge of this East Rutherford team. At the running back position, Breece Hall has shown up to be a very good pick. I believe he was a late round pick as well. If I go to awards, fourth rounder, not bad. But he's proven to be a very solid running back throughout this year. I should probably grab all the stats, shouldn't I? Just to actually check in. Of course, again, ratings are going to be a little bit off, but still. Garrett Wilson is kind of the main guy in the receiving core for this Jets team. There's really not much else that we have. Garrett Wilson, again, he's a very solid young piece. I believe former Rookie of the Year as well. But I'm not fully certain on that. I think he was Offensive Rookie of the Year last year. If I can actually check their... hold up. Pretty sure he was, at least. 1,000 yards this past season. Did very nice job. Yes, he was the Offensive Rookie of the Year in his rookie season. Just got off of a 1,000-yard year. Someone who is... Again, he's a nice young piece for the future. Someone who can, I think, be a #1 receiver out there. But aside from him, you have Allen Lazard, who was fine. But right now, he's getting hella overpaid. I mean, yeah. You have Randall Cobb, who's old, near retirement. Not much there. Tight ends, you don't really have anything much to speak of. Tyler Conklin is fine. Then you have your offensive line, which is bad. The reason Aaron Rodgers got hurt was this offensive line. Your best piece is Mekhi Becton, who has shown flashes at times, but not consistently enough to be really properly good. Elijah Vera Tucker, I think, missed most of the year. I think it's an actual injury that he had, the ACL or Achilles tear, I should say. Joe Tippmann could be a solid piece. I mean, it's a work in progress, but this line is still very bad. Moving on to the defensive end, however, is where things really start showing off. Will McDonald, first-round pick of last year, has some room for development. John Franklin Myers, probably someone who I might end up trading just to give room for Will McDonald. Meanwhile, you have Bryce Huff, who's, I think, just going to be walking in free agency because Jermaine Johnson ended up picking a dev trait. I don't think he was actually all that good, or, like, particularly good this past year. I can double-check. Never mind. Okay, he was a Pro Bowler this year, so a good year for Jermaine Johnson. He can help out on the line, and, of course, Quinnen Williams, one of the better nose tackles in the game, ranked number 2 right now, in fact, according to the game. Quinnen Williams, very solid piece up the middle. Linebacking core is not the best. You have C.J. Mosley, nice veteran up the middle with a superstar dev. Nice. Is he a field general? Yeah, field general guy. Someone who can run the defense. Quincy Williams, pretty solid. Quinnen's brother. And then, of course, Sauce Gardner out in the D-back core. Sauce, one of, if not the best corners in the game. He is tremendously talented, and someone who can really hold the line together. You have some solid veterans, DJ Reed. You have Michael Carter, who is pretty solid as well. Bryce Hall, not bad as well. But really, aside from those, you don't have too much going for you. So, the question is exactly how are we going to do things around here? One thing, I am not using a real draft class. I don't know, why not use one? I am using, shoot, what is the actual name of... Let me check the name of the draft class. Matt Knight's draft class strength generator. Using that, and then I'm also using Fang's recruit overhaul just to get names, just to make things a little bit more interesting. So I have not done any scouting since this was mainly just getting a template, but we will be using these as we go along. This year in particular, if we go and look at our draft class strength, very weak at QB, very strong at wide receiver, strong at end, strong at linebacker, weak at corner, and weak at punter, which isn't really a big deal, but very deep receiver class in this one to help bring things through. I'm going to try doing the series fairly realistically. I'm going to go through a lot of trades, a lot of stuff with the draft is going to be especially necessary to go through. I'll be, doing trades for other teams. Free agency, I'm going to let the AI handle that all themselves. For XP, I am using Mr. Hurricane's XP settings. So all of that. I think it's Kane21. I use his gameplay sliders. Otherwise, we have... I'm trying to remember if there's anything else really to note. If I just pop on into here. Yeah, it's Kane21's. Do simulation at... I'm between 11 and 12 minutes, 15-second play clock time. We'll do everything manually. Very hard trade, very high free agent motivation. Yeah. Otherwise, also progressive fatigue off. That does some glitches with the auto sliders, which I like the auto sliders, so I don't want them to be glitching out. But yeah, this is not going to be the end of the episode. I think I'll go all the way through the off-season in this one. Lots of editing. Hopefully I remember to do the post-commentary for all of this, and it'll be a long time going through with all the post-editing, but still. We'll go through all of that. We'll go through, make sure that we got everything going on. And next episode, we'll probably do a quick overview of the... we'll do a quick overview of the roster at the very end. Or at the end of the offseason, I should say. / beginning of the new season, before we actually hop into that new season. That's it for the live comm. We'll head into post-commentary as I do all my off-season stuff. Of course, our offseason starts off with free agency. So look at all of our upcoming free agents. Elijah Vera Tucker, we do accept the 5th-year option on. However, everyone else here, we do let walk. Chuck Clark was a interesting look, at least to initially grab. However, at the time, did not pick him up. Zach Wilson, we did not pick up the 5th-year option. However, he will be still potentially our backup, still waiting on news regarding Aaron Rodgers. As for our free agency pickups, Matt Filer was offered a short deal, as was Matt Pert, bringing in some depth to the offensive line. Richie James coming in as a nice veteran wideout to help out the team. Taylor Lewan helps out quite a bit as well. So will Kyle Fuller on a very cheap deal. And then afterwards, we get Mo Hurst to bolster the line. Javon Kinlaw helps out the line as well. Chuck Clark, we do bring back on a short deal. And the big signing, splash free agent Josh Allen, the edge rusher, $140 million over 5 years, comes to New York. Comes to East Rutherford. A massive pickup in Josh Allen really bolsters the defense even more. Makes this a terrifying team to go up against, but that is still not it. A big free agency class in this one. Couple of quarterbacks going out. Baker Mayfield there. And of course, in the free agency pool, Saquon Barkley going out to Arizona. Derrick Henry to Los Angeles. Amari Cooper makes his way over to the Texans, while Mike Evans heads up to the Evil Empire. Number of, again, big signings. This was a very deep free agency class, a very stacked free agency class. Mike Gesicki, the only tight end available. Tyron Smith heads out to Las Vegas. Wants to get into the gambling game. Mitch Moore signs with Vegas as well. The left end's a little bit quiet on that front. Calais Campbell heads out to Minnesota. In the process, Chris Jones signs with the Texans as well. The Texans, following a great year, decide to bolster up their team, go in for an all-in push. Leonard Williams joins the Bears as well. Picks up quite a few big things there. Josh Uche goes to Vegas as well. Vegas very active in the free agency front as well. Number of teams very active, some of them a little bit more quiet on that front. Brian Burns heads out to Los Angeles as well. Again, the Rams very active in free agency, wanting to prevent things from another bad year. Chidobe Awuzie joins as well, while L'Jarius Sneed heads out to the Phoenix area, out to Arizona, I should say. As we see, again, more people going through and just going over some of the big free agency that remain. Kirk Cousins remains unsigned at the end of free agency. We'll see how he does in the preseason, kind of just after the post-draft period. Zach Moss remains unsigned. Dobbins and Ezekiel Elliott as well. Of course, no fullbacks being signed. Unfortunately, Fullback Nation does not represent Kendrick Bourne, the big name out there. Odell Beckham and Marquez Valdez-Scantling also do not join in free agency. Lots of wide receivers still on the board for other people to pick up. Tight end class still has a number of decent pieces there. Andrews Pete for leading the tackle class, or the blindside tackle class, I should say. Cody Whitehair still available. Connor Williams, a bit of a surprise to not sign. Ben Jones possibly on his way to retirement. Meanwhile, the right guard class not particularly deep in this year, while Jermaine Illuminor leads the way for the right tackles. Danico Autry, left ends, starting to go through the defensive ends. Number of names still not going through. Nose tackles were pretty filled up as well. Of course, a big year for Chris Jones to get a lot of money. Leonard Floyd does not sign with a team. Yannick Ngakoue does not sign with a team as well. Moving on to the outside backs. Still not too many people out there. Bobby Wagner, kind of the big name up in the middle. Some questions about his age still carrying him back. Shaq Leonard as well. Kyle Van Noy does not sign to any team as well. Again, possibly because of age. Emmanuel Mosley does not sign anywhere. for him, veteran, starting to be phased out as a cornerback. Free safeties, still a little bit quiet on that front, while Marcus May, bit of a surprise to not sign anywhere. Number of kickers still available, number of punters still available. As we head towards the NFL draft. Draft order is different than real life, but that's something where I'm not gonna bother with it. The Bears had the first overall selection. That still remains the same. And in this class, they go for Andrew Revere. Andrew Revere, the 6'2 edge out of the University of Georgia. A fantastic athlete as a Bulldog. Someone who really was the consensus #1 overall pick. Has a ton of upside at the top level. Very strong physical profile, but maybe a little bit less refinement than some might expect. A little bit of a spoiler for the rest of the draft, if you could read there. Second pick went to the Cardinals. And the Cardinals would select the 6'5 edge out of the national champion Ole Miss Rebels, Braden Dew. Braden Dew anchored the NCAA's best defense in the entire league. A great power rusher on the edge. He's someone who, again, really can fill up the stat sheet. He's someone who can do a little bit of everything. 6'5", he's got great physicality. Someone who can really get out there and move. The New England Patriots, I should say, are the third one up on the board, where they will take Isaiah Nixon, the 6'2 wide receiver out of the University of Oregon. Isaiah Nixon, the reigning Heisman winner, has great physical upside and a knack for getting out and making plays after the catch. He's someone that projects pretty well at the next level. He does need a little bit of work on his deep routes, but can still be someone very big for the next level. The Washington Commanders, next up on the board. Fourth overall pick will go to Teron Flowers out of Ole Miss as well. Another one of the Rebels, the national champs. Teron Flowers, great chemistry with Braden Dew, helped him to be one of the best guys out in the middle of the field. Someone who could force a lot of drops, and someone who could really stop the run if they're trying to get around Braden Dew. Teron Flowers worked very well with that national champion Rebel team, and is one of the big reasons why they remained as the #1 defense and eventual champions. Ayla Rhodes goes to the Chargers, stays in Southern California. He was projected at the #1 pick before the year, but he had a bit of a lackluster season for the USC Trojans. Led him to falling to 5th overall, but he has a bunch of physical tools that just can't be taught. Of course, did fall off thanks to a good year from Andrew Revere, but the physical tools still out there. The Titans, next up on the board, would go for Dorian King, 6'4 wide receiver out of the University of Florida. He battled Isaiah Nixon and running back Matt Thiergood for the Heisman Trophy, but he lost out due to an early season torn MCL. And he's someone with a ton of upside. He's someone who could possibly be the best in the class if he can remain healthy. Of course, the MCL, a little bit of an issue there. The Giants would pick next. They would go for Matt Thiergood, the 6-foot running back out of Florida State, someone who is a highlight maker, and he barely lost out on the Heisman. Some of them saying thanks to the fact that Florida just beat out their cross-state rivals in the Seminoles. Matt Thiergood with a 4.24 40-yard dash, one of the fastest people in the class, one of the fastest people that we've seen in a long time. He's someone who can really make highlight plays, and someone who hopefully projects to be a replacement for Saquon Barkley after he heads down south to Arizona. Moving on to the Jets ourselves. We go pretty far down the board, down the projected board. It's a very deep defensive class, something that the Jets don't need. Instead, going for Lucas Hazard, the 6'3 center out of Clemson. He's someone with a good strength and some good hands as well, but what really put him over the edge was the mental aptitude that he has at the position. He's someone who can help captain the defense at the center position. He still is a little bit unpolished, but he's someone that here at the Jets think he can project very well at the next level as another piece to an interior line, alongside Elijah Vera Tucker and Joe Tipman. Moving on to the Cardinals, the Cardinals will pick up Marlon Powell, the 6'2" edge out of the the Falcons, I should say. Pick the 6'2" edge out of Louisville. He really has a nose for the ball and is made of grit and sandpaper. He's someone who was always fighting for the ball. He still is a little bit raw as a prospect, but they're not afraid of him going out there, making the work, and the Falcons really hopeful for Marlon Powell. Moving on to the Bears. The Bears will go after another interior lineman, Zach Steinbau, the 6'5" guard out of Vanderbilt, the Outland Trophy winner. And he was really able to win that thanks to being able to outmuscle pretty much everyone on the line. Only ranked 4th in the bench press at his pro day, but 92 strength. He is someone who is incredibly strong out there up the middle. So very good on the interior is Steinbau. Really just a physical beast of a player out there. A very quiet guy, but still someone who can do well. The Vikings would then select Keenan Nixon, 6'5" edge out of Notre Dame. Very slippery player who can really change the game. He has a good ability of getting to the ball while being 6'5". The Broncos take Keith Gilmore out of Texas Tech, 6'3". He's surprised to go this early. He's very raw, but he has very good strength, very good speed, but he still needs a few years in the oven. Deontay Macha goes to the Raiders. The AAC Player of the Year, but despite his dominance in that level, there's some questions about his ability at some of the higher levels. AJ Champagne goes to the Colts. The 2-year captain out of Florida State, 6'5", just found the right gaps in the defense, but he was a little bit silent in the playoffs. Tevin Curry, 6'4" edge out of Georgia, goes to the Saints. He formed a formidable duo with Andrew Revere. He is a little bit more polished of a prospect, but nowhere near as high of a ceiling thanks to his physical upside. Jason Floyd, 6'3" out of Florida, former #1 high school prospect. Florida kid his whole life. He can really run over the O-line, but isn't the most technical guy out there. Victor Jones, 6' wide receiver out of Auburn. He's someone who can get the ball and really make things happen, but late in the SEC season, he's had some pretty big drops. Devontae Green, 6'4" tackle out of South Carolina. Very difficult to run up the middle. He's a big guy, very strong, very good athlete, but needs work on being a refined football player. Armanze Ogwegbu, 6'2" corner out of Alabama. Great athlete, good peripheral vision, who is a good lockdown zone guy. Kendrick Allen, 5'11", wide receiver out of Michigan. Deadliest deep threat in the class. He can make big plays happen, but also can disappear in some crucial moments. He needs to work on being a team guy who can make smaller plays. Calvin Irvine Jr., 6'2" wide receiver out of Texas. He's someone who can just really be whatever Miami needs. Miami at no loss for wide receivers. Denard Hubert goes to the Eagles. Hubert, a bit lackluster of an athlete compared to other people in this very good athletic class. He's a skilled finesse guy, someone who can really do a lot. Duma Azukiwe, 6'1", corner out of LSU. Very similar to Ogwegbu, kind of interchangeable for the most part, but Azukiwe, some off-field issues held him back. Ryan Wright, 6'4", corner out of Colorado, goes to the Cowboys. Great size, great athlete. He's not as polished in the court as a zone guy as Azukiwe or Ogwegbu, but he can go man-to-man. Next up, Tavares Smith, 6'3", corner out of Ole Miss. Jim Thorpe winner, but there is a question about how much of his game was helped due to his strong other teammates. Trayshawn Darame out of South Carolina, 6'5", great burst off the line, but he's a little bit one-note with his moves, so he can be scouted around. Trey Jackson, 6'2", tackle out of Notre Dame. Complimented Keenan Allen very well in the interior. Not someone who makes big plays himself, but can really help out the team overall. Cody Van Zant, 6'4", tackle out of Arkansas. Not a very polished prospect, but has this it factor. Just something about him really helps. Bit of a reach for round 1, however. Next up, Terrell Parham, 5'11" corner out of Northern Illinois. He captained that Northern Illinois defense, but he's purely a zone guy, struggles in man coverage. Ronald Burdine, 6'2", edge out of Texas Tech, has a knack for getting off the block, but one of the big reasons for his fall coming down this late in the first round is that he's a little bit inconsistent on tackling. Xavier Joyner, 6'4", edge out of Alabama, kind of a role player piece, someone who is not going to be too flashy, but he's good at applying pressure to the quarterback. Joe Paulson finishes out the first round. He is a 6'7" tackle out of Notre Dame. He's the best tackle in the class, very sturdy base, but does struggle against some slipperier guys and has a little bit of trouble of being a little bit too handsy as well. First round went by pretty far. This was a very deep class in terms of pass rushing, very deep class in terms of cornerbacks. It was a very defensive class, and we have another class next year is also projected to be very good on the defensive end as well. Just still going through the draft, again, a lot of edges, a lot of people on that defensive line, I should say. A couple of people in the secondary, but really it's just a problem of this is a class that the Jets really didn't need much help in. The Jets are a very good team on the defensive line. Having Josh Allen now also helps with that, but they kind of have a little bit too much on the line potentially. Quinnen Williams, of course, great on the defensive line as well. You have John Franklin Myers, you have Jermaine Johnson, you have Will McDonald. You have a lot of very good pieces on the defensive line, so this was a class that the Jets didn't really need, and this wasn't a class that they really saw much reason to move up. A lot of your top pieces were fairly interchangeable defensive ends, a lot of people who kind of had similar skill sets to each other, so there weren't too many people who was like, alright, we need to go for this pick. It was a very lackluster class in all honesty. A very strong defensive class for sure, but a class that you're getting a lot of people who are projecting fairly similar at the next level. We're heading up closer to the Jets' second pick in the draft, losing out on their second rounder, thanks to the Aaron Rodgers trade, which will now lead us to our third round pick, following the selection of Sir Roderick Lovett, guard out of Auburn. The Jets, eventually, after a little bit of discussion, go to Marvin Davis, the 6'5" wide receiver out of LSU. He was early on in the season projected as a first rounder, but he ended up missing the second half of the season due to legal issues involving marijuana possession. He's a great check down option who really needs refinement on some of his deeper routes. He's a big physical guy. He's very fast out there on the field for his size. He's someone with some good moves as well, but again, a little bit of questions early on regarding his regarding his character. A lot of issue regarding if he's going to be reliable for the team. And again, he's someone that is still quite raw in terms of being more than a checkdown guy. But still, a hidden development on both Hazard and Davis will be very helpful. Two big guys out there, hopefully bringing in another wide receiver, trying to convince Aaron Rodgers to come back. As of draft time, still unheard on Aaron Rodgers' decision in regards to if he will be remaining with the team or if he will go into retirement if the Achilles tear is a career-ending injury. Really is the big question. And again, going into the draft, the Jets, aware of this potential issue, still holding out for Aaron Rodgers. But the thing is, this was a very weak quarterback class as well. Can't really get a replacement for Zach Wilson because you only had two quarterbacks very late in the draft, only third round projected for both quarterbacks. I believe it was third round projection. They were just struggled to find a good quarterback class. Next year, also not the strongest class in the quarterback position. However, 2 years from now, a very good class at quarterback. So really, the hope is that Aaron Rodgers can stay at least one more year, potentially stay 2 more years as well. Heading into the second pick for the New York Jets, they end up going with Travis Proctor, the 6'4" tight end, also out of LSU. Shot up draft boards after the combine. Very strong performance there. He's very raw as a tight end. He's not the greatest blocker. He's not the greatest catcher out there. But he's someone who can still do a lot of work just as a good athlete. Again, he's someone that still needs a lot of work, but is potentially a very good piece. Second, fourth round pick will be traded back with the Cleveland Browns, picking up a number of late round picks, as well as a fourth for next year. Browns, in exchange for the second, fourth round pick, would end up taking Jameel King, linebacker out of Colorado. Jameel King, a potential guy up there that the Browns felt the need to trade up for. In addition, the Jaguars would swap their fourth this year for the Chiefs' third-round pick next year. Since they had 2 picks in a row, the Chiefs would then go for, in that position, they would pick up J.D. Williams, tight end out of Louisville. Continuing on with the draft, first quarterback Matt Minshew would come off the board in the 4th round. Minshew, the number 1 quarterback on the board. Still not a particularly good prospect out there. Minshew would end up as a 68 overall. 6'4 quarterback out of Alcorn State. Again, a very weak quarterback class in this year. You really didn't have anyone really going for you if you're looking for that. We move along a little bit more through the draft. Again, this was a very deep class at the defense, and the Jets, us as the Jets, really needed offense on our team, and that's just something that we didn't get overall. Quan Jones would go over to the... There was a couple times where I was stopping. I had a buddy of mine helping me out with the draft process, so there would be times where we're going through the names, exactly how to pronounce some of them. But still, again, it's a weak class for us at that, at what we need, which was offensive line. You had a number of good prospects. And then, of course, quarterback we really need. Running back is not really an issue for us. But, of course, it never hurts to have some backup quarterbacks. Backup running backs, I should say, at this position. Draft still going on as per usual. But we end up with our 5th round pick, where the Jets would end up taking Tyron Njoku, 6'1" free safety out of Virginia Tech. He's someone who's played every game for a pretty bad Virginia Tech team over his past 3 seasons, starting from his redshirt sophomore year. He is a fantastic athlete, mainly a track and field guy, mostly hurdles. However, he joined the football team, still very good at football. And good enough to be drafted, but in terms of being a very impactful player at the next level, that is a little bit questionable. Someone who's not quite good at the whole tackling thing. Someone who needs a lot of work. He's good in zone, but again, he's someone that needs a lot of help. He's someone who needs a lot of refinement. He's someone who will need to train behind Jordan Whitehead, Chuck Clark, train behind a lot of people who are still good out there, who can hopefully teach the young guy a few new tricks. Heading up to the Jets' first 6th round pick, there are 2 6th round picks that we have. We would go for Michael Edwards, 5'11", running back out of Mizzou. He's kind of a bowling ball up the middle. He's a very good, well-rounded back in terms of running. He's someone who can either make it work on the juke, make it work just going up the middle. But the problem is that he is one of the worst catchers in the draft. Also a very poor blocker. If you see him on the field, you can assume that you're running with him, because otherwise you're just playing 10 on 11. Michael Edwards, not a very refined guy. He's a late pick. He is a good running back, but he's not a good anything else. So, someone, again, fitting of this late round selection. Still going through a number of initially projected first round picks going through a little bit late, mainly. Madden tends to get a lot of first round wide receivers go pretty late because they shouldn't be rated that high anyways. Get the Mondre Creamer, great. Again, I use Fang's Recruit Overhaul for the names. I am not looking at any of the stats. I'm not changing any of the stats. Nothing like that. For the final pick of their draft, the Jets would go with... I did forget to edit this. Hold up just a minute. Hokalani McCon, we did take a look at. There's a number of people who, again, these early round draft picks that you see just not doing too well, whether it's because of their 40 times, whether it's because they just don't have great hands. A lot of questions about a lot of people. So really just the issue was, who exactly are we going to pick? Yeah, apparently I just forgot to edit this. Well, obviously you saw me edit everything else that we went through. Pujanet, great name by the way, Pujanet the third. Get some great names. Juantez Marshall would be. Take a look at pretty much every one of these highly projected prospects. We kind of thought, all right, what can we make out of them? What can we possibly do with these guys projected high? Main thing we're looking at is if you got good speed, you can at least be a go route guy. But in the end, would not find too much going on. 4.43, not bad from Daryl Hines. Would be a solid look. However, we would eventually go with the Greedy Robinson. 4.36, the 6'1" wide receiver out of Texas Tech. He was projected early on in the class initially, but he really floundered at his combine for the most part. His route running was really bad, and he had a lot of off-the-field issues. Controversial tweets, abrasive personality, really led him to falling. Again, just not refined as a wideout. And so, following the draft, we got a number of big pickups. I did accidentally skip out of the late 6th and into the 7th round, so we can go take a look at those once I find out where we are on here. I can just quick go through them. Camion Bendy, a big late round pickup for the Chiefs. Defending champion Chiefs at that. 7th round pick, Kavenga Brown. Would go in, took a look at him. DeJune Kinsey Jr. as well. Elliott Germany, John Pierce. Number of good pickups in some late rounds. Pujanet, you're Mr. Irrelevant. 70 overall, still quite good. But that would be the end of our draft. And some big news came out shortly after the draft, if I can actually go to the correct menu. Because if we go into our, I believe it is league transactions that we want to look at, we want to go to retired because, where is he at? Aaron Rodgers would end up retiring. So the Jets would lose out. You know, what we're going to say is shortly after the draft, maybe a few weeks after, Aaron Rodgers would retire. Apparently just not happy with the class. Randall Cobb would retire soon afterwards. So the Jets kind of hung out to dry by Aaron Rodgers. Not really a surprise there. So they would be going into the season with just a big draft class here. A number of, some big losses out there, mainly at that quarterback position. Zach Wilson would remain your starter, or will remain your starter, I should say, for the next coming year. Next episode, we'll go over a overview of our team following the the undrafted free agent signing, the off-season free agent signings, all of that stuff. However, that will be it for this time. Again, next episode we'll have our first game, which will hopefully be pretty soon.